the PHB, the Monster Manual, the DMG, the Big Three. That's kind of how the Beachy Wizards build the 3 core books that teach you how to play the actual Ding Dang Dragon game. Except, well, everyone kinda knows that the Dungeon Master's Guide is the red-headed stepchild of the 3. It's confusingly written, the order of the information presented does not make a lick of sense, what is useful in it is buried under a bunch of useless stuff, so good thing we're getting an update. And a good thing I got it early. I'm Antonio D'Amico, this is Pointy Hat, and today we're gonna go through the entirety of the new 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide to give you a one-stop shop for everything that has changed between the old and the new version, so we can see if this one actually manages to teach you how to be a dungeon master. Okay, very quickly, time for the insufferable song and dance. This is not sponsored by Wizards of the Coast. They did not pay me for this, they're not reviewing this script, money did not exchange hands in any way. I am legally obligated to tell you if something is indeed sponsored. I did, actually, when they sponsored another video, not this one. And guess what? This video is literally sponsored by someone else, not Wizards. So no, Wizards did not sponsor this, but they did send me the PDF of the Dungeon Master's Guide. I don't know if they're sponsoring someone else, certainly not me this time. Cool? Cool. And you know how we do these long videos around here. I need my human familiar for this. Human familiar! Human familiar! Human! Wait, come to think of it, he wasn't in the last video either. Where is he? Aha! Human familiar! It's my birthday! That was the 4th of September, get back to work. I said no more 1-hour videos. Yes, I had to read the 2 books again, one after the other, so my brain has turned to oat milk. Toe tap a flea. Okay, so no more preamble, let's get right into it. The designers themselves have said that the 2014 DMG was rushed and not as great as it could be, and I agree with them, because I do not like the 2014 DMG at all.
Resources were at a premium. We focused a lot of attention on the player's handbook, and we focused on the monster manual. The DMG, I wouldn't say it got short shrift, but it kind of had to wait in line. We couldn't lavish the attention on it that we felt it really needed.
And the 2024 is a massive improvement on this in most areas. Keyword most, you'll see. This video is going to cover the changes as well as some mechanic additions that are brand new to this book. We have 6 sections: general overview, bastions, how to play and social stuff, travel, combat encounters and CR, and finally, DM's toolbox. I divided the changes like this because I felt like it, and because I think it makes sense. We're gonna start with some general changes throughout the book, then we're gonna go into specific sections, and I'll offer my thoughts on everything as we go. Got that? Cool. Let's go. General overview. First off, your favorite part, boring stat time. The 2014 DMG is 320 pages, the 2024 DMG is 384 pages. That's like a 60-page difference, but also it means nothing. This is like when video games promise the biggest open world ever. Having more pages doesn't mean anything if it's not filled with interesting content, but if you somehow care about page count, that's the page count. Size queen behavior. So ultimately, what I can define as the biggest difference between the 2 books is vibe. Let me explain. If I had to define it in one sentence, and this is, by the way, not indicative as to which one I like better, I'll say that the 2014 DMG is a collection of information that might one day be useful for you and your DMing journey, like written in a confusing way, but maybe one day you'll find a use for that specific piece of information, whereas the 2024 DMG is like a step-by-step guide, a real guide as to how to become a good dungeon master. 2014 doesn't really have a focus, but if it has one, it is creating worlds, and it gives you tons of info that might one day help you in doing just that. Whereas 2014 focuses on creating stories and gives you tips as to how to make these stories cool to play at the table. When it comes to actually explaining how to become a good dungeon master, 2024 explains it about 1,000,000 times better, whereas 2014 has like 1,000 tables and pieces of information as to how to make things that you will never use, but one day you will find in it the thing that you need, and then you'll be glad that someone bothered to include how to make a river in the 2014 DMG. Let me give you an example of this. Preparing a session. I'm sure that everyone here has read the 2014 DMG cover to cover. Well, because you have, you will know that the 2014 DMG basically gives you no guidance on prep. I mean, it's mentioned, it says you should prep, and then it throws you to the wolves. In the 2024 version, there are pages, in plural, pages, telling you exactly how to prep. Like down to the hour, it has a little system based on how many hours you have to prep, and if you have more hours, you add these 2 other steps. It's great. It's so much more useful for the actual act of DMing. Also, information is organized in a much more, I don't know if the word is natural or useful, but it's one of the two, in a much more readable way. Like the order makes sense. Like the order of things makes sense. Except for a thing. If you're a beginner DM and you read the 2014 DMG, like cover to cover, as everyone has, I don't think you'll be ready to DM. I actually know people that did exactly that. Like that's how they started DMing. They just read the whole DMG and they told me that they were absolutely not ready to DM. I cannot say with certainty that if you read the 2024 DMG as a baby DM, you will be ready to DM because the book is not out there and I'm not a baby DM. I did read it, but I'm not a baby DM, so I don't know if a baby DM would be ready. But it feels like they would be much more qualified to do that with this new version. So I am praising how much better the 2024 one is at the DM part of DMG. But now we get into the scary, scary land of nuance. In 2024, there's a lot of emphasis on story building, on creating the perfect environment for you and your players to make a story together, collaborative storytelling. There's page upon page of conflict, story building, featuring the PCs as the main characters of the story. It's all there, and tips and tricks on how to make that happen. They have an extremely beefy creating a campaign section that goes into extreme detail on this. 2014 has exactly 8 pages on making a campaign, but here's a nuance. It's coming, guys. It's coming. Are you scared yet? What 2014 has that 2024 doesn't have is world building. 2014 has a focus on world building and on just making your own thing that 2024 just does not have. The 2014 DMG has 30 pages on creating your own world. The 2024 faults some of this info on creating a campaign and just omits a ton of it. Now, granted, some of this info was extremely niche and bloated this section and it didn't need to be there, but some of it was good info and it's just not here in 2024. I'll get into it in the specific section that this is affected by, but here's an example. In 2014, there's a create your own setting section. Not create your own campaign, create your own setting. In 2014, this was 30 pages, and in 2024, it has been cut to 5 questions that are inside the aforementioned create your own campaign section. So a lot of that info is just not there in 2024. Cosmology is another great example. When 2014 explains to you D&D cosmology, it explains it to you in the worst possible way, but it gives you tips as to how to create your own cosmology, your own little planes with little gods to torture your players with. 2024 DMG explains the existing D&D cosmology 2024 times better. Get it? It explains it better. And because the 2024 focus is on story, it gives you 1,000 ideas as to how to use this cosmology in your campaigns. Like possible conflicts that can arise from it that you can make a whole campaign about, and hell, even themes to explore. It's sick, it's good. But there's not a peep on making your own cosmology. Apparently store-bought is not only fine, but also heavily encouraged. So yeah, there you have it. Nuance. Do with this what you like. That's a general overview of the book. We're getting into the fun stuff now. What else? What else? Oh yeah, no flanking. Just, there's no rules for flanking. Flanking is over. I don't use flanking. There's way too many ways of giving you advantage in D&D already, but I just didn't know where to put this in this video, like that tidbit of information, so now you know. Okay, moving on to the fun stuff now. Bastions. Alright, starting in hot, Bastions are the coolest thing about the 2024 DMG, and I've never been more excited about a new set of rules being added to the core rules of the game in ever. There's nothing like Bastions in 2014. This is not really a change, it's just an addition, but it's too big of an addition not to talk about it, so I'm talking about it. The idea of a home base is not new to D&D, of course. There's a mention of it in 2014, like they say, you could do that, and that's it. There's nothing in the old DMG even close to the Bastion system. I get why they made such a big deal about this, like they made a ton of videos about it because it's really cool. So what is it? The Bastion system allows you to play The Sims in D&D. It's Animal Crossing and Dragons. It's Roller Coaster Tycoon hours. It's great. If the DM is using the Bastion system, every player gets 1 Bastion at level 5. Either you tie it into the narrative somehow, or they're just all Nepo babies who are getting some cool inheritance. And they all get goodies for maintaining that Bastion. Players can build their Bastions next to each other into a sort of like compound gated community sort of situation. And after reading the rules, that is 100% what you should be doing. I don't know why it's a choice. You should do that. I don't see it working if you don't.
It has no crime, no poverty, and no pushing.
But each individual Bastion is assigned to 1 player and 1 player only. There's no party Bastion. You can also combine Bastions to get a sort of Megazord timeshare in Florida sort of Bastion, and do that. You should do that because that gives you more perks. More on that later. So how does all this building actually happen? Well, a hot take here. I know this is not a popular take in some crowds, but I am just a co-world building / co-DM hater. I don't like those. I know, it's not trendy to not like that, but I don't know, man, I just don't like it. I like DMing better than playing, and that is for a reason. If you take stuff away from me, I am just a babysitter doing the worst job in the world so that other people have fun, and I want to have fun. I'm playing the game too. D&D has always been really good at like taking DMs as another player and ensuring they're fun and ensuring that they're also a priority in the game, and I feel like some other games are worse at that, foreshadowing for future stuff. But I'm happy to say that Bastion seemed like the only place in the game where it makes more sense to co-GM and co-world build than not do that. Bastion suggests that you hand over the map to your players and let them build their own bastion. And I actually think that this is exactly what you should do, because bastions kind of feel like an extension of character creation in a really cool way. There is so much detail in the rules about building a bastion. Like everything is well accounted for. Mechanically, I mean, not just flavor-wise. There's rules on super specific stuff like adding defensive walls, what happens if you do, and how much money and time it costs to build 5 feet of wall. But also basic stuff like corridors, staircases, ramps, so that Twitter can have their 84th identical and never-ending discourse on wheelchairs in D&D. I hate it here. Even more stuff, doors, windows, closets. And when I say detailed rules, I mean detailed with a capital A lot. Like, go to chapter 3 for kinds of doors to choose from kind of detail. Gotta say this, there's a lot of love poured into this. This was some people's on the design team's baby, and I love to see that when I read books like this. But this is not a system about building corridors and doors and ramps. No, bastions live or die on facilities, and they're actually useful in gameplay. So what are those? Facilities. You start your Animal Crossing house, I mean bastion, with 2 facilities. 1 cramped and 1 roomy. Yes, that's right, there are rules on the sizes of rooms. I said detail. Basic facilities are stuff like bedrooms, courtyards, kitchens, man caves, girl failure dens. You know, the essential. Basic facilities do not give you a mechanical benefit, like a bastion with a bedroom and a bastion without a bedroom function mechanically the same. But they are here for roleplay purposes. Like if you don't add a bedroom to your bastion, how are you and Goblin Oomphy possibly gonna find yourselves in "there's only 1 bed and we have to share" territory? Come on guys, think a little, this is serious stuff. Every facility you build into your bastion comes with its own slave, hirelings, which ensures that the facility runs properly so you can promote them to elite employee or whatever. These guys don't cost you anything somehow. The book says that each facility generates enough income for each hireling, which how? I don't know, man. Some of these are like arcane study. Like, is the hireling getting paid in arcane knowledge? Oh my god. Oh my god. Am I a hireling? All those galvanized square steel beams and eco-friendly wood veneer cost money though. A bunch of money. And time. Like adding a cramp facility, which not all facilities can be, is 500 gold pieces. Do you know what this is? Yep, exactly. Finally, D&D is adding money sinks. Finally. I'll explain why that's good later. But if basic facilities do not give you mechanical advantages, what does? Well, that's special facilities. Special facilities are finally the meat of the actual bastion system, and they are so sick. You can only have 1 of each special facilities unless otherwise stated. No mining any magic coin by building 74 magic coin farms or whatever. And you only get special facilities by leveling up. They don't cost money. You get 2 at level 5, 2 at level 8, 1 at 11, and the last one at 17. And some come with prerequisites too, like having an arcane focus or expertise on a skill, and you get them instantly. Like they just spawn, I guess. I understand that the narrative reason is that they were building this facility the whole time and it's just become available now, but I just think it's funnier if it spawns, like it's The Sims. Like at different stages of player puberty. Like, congrats, you're finally level 5. Here's a garden. It's like podcasting or craft beer when men hit 30. I wonder which one I'll get. So, what are some examples of these special facilities? Well, there are more banal ones like barracks, which allow you to recruit additional bastion defenders to protect it from meanies, or the garden, which allows you to harvest stuff. What stuff? Stuff like decorative flowers, food, herbs, or herbs if you're wrong, and poison. Okay, but as you go up in levels, they get exciting. And also, insane. I'm talking stuff like a casino, an entire guild hall for your MMORPG dreams, a goddamn zoo, like an actual zoo that allows you to recruit animals. I guess we're playing Zoo Tycoon now. And guess what? At level 17, you can make a demiplane facility. I love Bastions. And as I said, each of these gives you different perks, different mechanical benefits. How? Well, with Bastion turns. I'm not gonna get super deep into it, but every 7 days you get a Bastion turn. You can change this. There are rules to change that to make it longer. Not shorter though, which I think is an oversight. Some of my campaigns, they take a year and a half to run, but the in-game time is like 2 months. During that turn, you issue an order. And these go from stuff like craft, which makes a specific item depending on the facility you issue the order to, empower, which gives you a buff, harvest, which gives you a resource like Age of Empires or something, and so on and so forth. If you're not there at the Bastion to issue orders though, the Bastion automatically takes the maintain order, and the DM rolls on the Bastion events table. Yes, random events are back and they are here. They have cut down a lot on them, but sometimes it still happens. I'm okay with these though. It's a background thing. It's fine. Most of these Bastion events are good events, but you get a couple of setbacks here and there. Like your Bastion being under attack or finding out you employed a former criminal. Okay, you got the gist. If you haven't picked up on it by my very, very subtle opinion dropping, I love this. I think it's some of the most exciting pieces of design we've seen from D&D in a minute. We have seen stuff like this from third-party publishers, but I like this better, and I think that this legit has nothing to envy to those options. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there are beefier versions of this out there, like things that take more time and more spotlight in the game, but this, as it is in the 2024 DMG to me, feels perfectly balanced between being deep enough to matter without being too deep so it's all-consuming and all your game is about. Bottom line, I'm so down with Bastions, I'm using them 100% in my campaigns. A really cool application that they don't mention, but I definitely think they thought about, is that Bastions are great money sinks. A money sink is a thing in a video game where it's a money sink. It's a thing that takes in money. At least I think this concept comes from video games. I can't see it coming from anywhere else. I don't know. I don't care enough about researching the history of the term money sink. This is not what the video is about. It's just a thing that players can throw a ton of money at and it will eat up that money. You see MMORPGs adding these all the time because they are very important for a game's economy. And boy, is the D&D economy really ruined. D&D needed these badly, like very badly. Everyone is swimming in cash by like level 5. You have nothing to do with it. It's to the point where I feel like they could have like added cost to hirelings or to certain Bastion orders, like some of them cost money to do. As I said, in D&D, if you follow the rules that are laid out for you, it just means everyone has too much money, which is yet another thing that makes D&D a power fantasy, but it's not good for the game. Mr. Dungeons and Mr. Dragons said that they plan on expanding on these rules, like giving us new facilities and new orders, and God do I wish they do that, but I certainly, more than that, wish that they put this in the SRD, because that will mean that I and other designers can make Bastion, like new Bastions and new rules and new facilities of our own. Please put this in the SRD, please. It would allow people to make cool facilities, and by people, I mean me. Let me do it. Okay, next up, maps. There's an entire section of the DMG on maps. All of them are in that graph paper style, you know, hatching as wall stuff. But I'm surprised that in the lore glossary they include in this book, they don't mention one of the most well-known map makers in literally any plane of existence. You know, the one that makes those maps that literally transport you and your party to completely different worlds just by laying them on the table. Acting more like portals than maps, taking you to places that range between quaint provincial town to literal mind flayer lair. Their name, well, it's Cheipeku, of course, the sponsor of this video. That's right, they're back, and you know them. But do you really know them? Because Cheipeku is, as usual, killing it to an insane degree with their Patreon. Instead of buying a map pack, Cheipeku offers you to join their Patreon, and once you do, you get access to more than 4,000 maps. Yep, 4,000 all at once. And these are like, they are wild. Look at them scrolling through the screen right now. This is a fraction of their power. And guess what? They have animated maps to offer too. Imagine the impact of throwing that up on a VTT or one of those cool mounted TV tables that people cooler than me have. And if you're like me and you need your maps to reflect the fact that in the game world, it's actually nighttime at 3 AM on a weekday, guess what? Maps come with a variation with stuff like time of day, but also weather effects and a bunch of other stuff. I love Cheipeku maps. I've always been a fan, so I love when they sponsor me because I get to talk about a thing I love. So if this sounds like you might also love them and the DMG graph paper dungeon maps are not gonna cut it, go take a look at their Patreon. It's the very first link in the description. And now that we've done maps, let's go back to 2024 DMG stuff. How to play and social stuff. Okay, so there are like a gajillion new sections in this book that are either rehashes of 2014 stuff that have completely changed or brand new stuff. And they're all kind of about not having your players, you know, mutiny and engage in cannibalism at the game table. They're all social stuff. And also, all these sections are way too small to give them their own section in this video. So I'm gonna focus on the most interesting one. Ensuring fun for all. A very Sesame Street-esque title. Anyway, this is the sort of session 0 / things that people get mad about. So hopefully I buried this section deep enough into this video so that the people that would scream at me in the comments have clicked away by now. You guys are the real ones for staying. Don't scream at me. They give you safety tools now. And they have a little handout for you to give to your players and Okay, so I believe people should use safety tools. I am one of those. I am LGTV, I am postmodern, whatever that is. I use pronouns like every day when I talk. Like in normal conversation, I will just be like, he said this. I am so coastal elite, I live on an island. There's only coast. Not in the US though. I don't know if it still counts. I am all of those things, and I do not need to be convinced to use safety tools, but there are people out there that believe that they don't have to use them. And boy, has this handout been designed in a lab to turn those people away. Like, pink baby beholder? Really? Here's what I mean. When trying to make someone see things from your perspective, it helps to meet them where they're at. And these people are not at pink baby beholder. Next time you do this sheet, just put a big, dumb, scary dragon on it. The dragon is asking them to not be weird at the table, and what do they not want to come up? Don't believe me? Okay, go to the comments. Go to the comments right now, and you will see someone crying there about how the game is ruined now because the beholder is pink. He's writing right now this comment. Hi, Steven. The kicker is that I like this sheet better than the baseline Lines and Veils sheet that has been kicking around TTRPG spaces forever now. It asks you what you don't want to see in the game, sure, but it also asks you what you would like to see in the game, like your hopes for it. It also asks expectations and helps you manage at-table concerns. It's a good sheet. It's really useful information. I'm gonna use it next time. Why not? Let's give it a try. Except maybe don't call these hard and soft limits. I feel like that terminology is taken by another type of dungeon.
My tastes are very singular.
The rest of the section is more social stuff, although they do have like a specific call out as to how to stop antisocial behavior. Anyway, they specifically call out it's what my character would do as an excuse and how to deal with that. And also, Peasant Railgun gets a mention here. Good. I like when I can tell that the people writing the thing play the actual game and engage with the community. It's nice. Okay, that's enough kumbaya for my liking. I want to talk about real mechanics now. And since we're talking about changes, why don't we take the section that has changed the most since 2014 next? Let's go. Travel. Okay, since we covered a completely new thing, I want to go back to something that has changed since the 2014 version, completely and in a massive way. Now, some of you may know that I did a pretty popular video on travel, and in it, I gave my own system for people to use for free. And let me just say that that fruit looks familiar. Just kidding. These books take a long ass time to write. There's no way that they were even a little bit inspired by my take. It just makes me happy that we thought about a very similar system. If you haven't seen that video, you might not know that the 2014 version of travel is, how you say, ass. It's barely mentioned, for one. It basically devolves into montage it away, or math, like die in a grave made of math. It's not fun and everyone hates it. But of course you knew that because you have read the DMG cover to cover. Just like me, before making this video. Travel has seen a massive update in 2024 in that it's outlined now. There's a section to it. Whatever they added will be better, because boy, was it bad before. It uses a system of stages. I'm kidding, please know that. But it does work very similarly to mine. I'm not gonna outline the whole thing, but basically you pick a number of stages. 1 if it's a short trip, 2 if it's a medium trip, 3 if it's consequential, and 4 if you're playing Lord of the Rings. Then you choose a challenge per stage. And these are not combat only, by the way. These can be a bunch of stuff, and they're really cool options. They divide it in encounters with other creatures, which is one of the options, and this one can be several other things, like distance sighting or like an actual combat encounter. Foraging, which has actual rules to forage. What? Finally, Rangers have something to do.
You have been promoted.
And stuff like navigational challenges, searches, tracking. It's a super in-depth system. It's too in-depth for my liking. Like, once again, boy does this ask you to do a whole bunch of math. But hey, if you felt like my system wasn't mathy enough, this feels like a perfect alternative. Even stuff like food and water has a place in the system. Exhaustion has been accounted for. It's an in-depth system. I like it. When I was designing mine, I was designing it with the goal to make it exciting. And this one certainly feels more exciting than, God, the one that was there before. But as I said, it's crunchy. It's too interested in realism for my liking. But I'm not sure if this crunch is adding a lot here. But hey, if you like crunch, then munch munch. Oh boy. And since we're in the vein of things that are badly done in 2014 DMGs, how about the greatest enemy of all DMs in the world? Combat encounters and CR. Okay, not gonna lie, this is the first section I checked out when I got the book. This barely qualifies as a hot take because every single D&D YouTuber has made the exact same video saying the exact same thing, but here it goes. I hate CR. I hate CR so much. What is CR? Well, it's a show where a bunch of them nerd-ass voice actors sit around and play Dungeons and Dragons. Just kidding. I love Critical Role. I hate challenge rating though. I think that challenge rating as it is plays a massive role in D&D being as hard to run as it is. It is not helpful in the slightest. It's extremely difficult to understand and use. It massively overestimates some monsters and underestimates others, and it just flat out does not work for its intended purpose, even a little bit. I make content for D&D. I mean, not YouTube videos. Well, that too, but I don't mean that. I mean actual playable content. Subclasses, species, adventures, campaigns. I make all that. I make a lot of it, and I play a lot of D&D. Every week, in fact, all the time. And I am a DM first and a player second. And yet, in my own games, not when I'm publishing something, I never, ever use CR. Why? Because it just does not work. It's so bad now, it feels like it's made to trick you. In my extremely early days of DMing D&D, using CR has led me to make unintended, extremely deadly combat encounters at lower levels, and the least challenging possible encounters at higher levels. The exact opposite of what I wanted to do. Whenever I make an adventure meant to be publishing, I have to use CR, and I go by their rules, and I have to always include a paragraph, like a disclaimer saying, you better beef up these monsters, because I've seen no party have a problem above level like 6 with anything of their CR. And of course I use CR. I want to write as official as possible because I'm a good boy that goes to vegetables on times and eats his bed. And without fail, when I do that, it makes low-level encounters deadly and high-level encounters a cakewalk every time. In my home game, I haven't run a single combat encounter that wasn't qualified as extremely deadly by CR, and I haven't killed a single PC. So, did they fix it? Well, it's better in every single way imaginable. AngelicChoir.mp3 plays in the background, but 1, that was not a high bar to clear, and 2, we don't really know if this works because we don't really have the monster manual, but we can make a guess by looking at this, and it's looking promising. I mean, it's just objectively better than the old one, and you know what? Yeah, objectively, you can find me on this, I'm right. First up, and once again, this goes for basically the entire book, but I remember them saying at Gen Con that they got a UX designer to take a look-see at this book-see, and boy does it show. The entire book, and this section is no exception, is so much easier to read. Everything makes sense. Great. What do I mean by this? Well, the very first thing you get in the combat encounters section is features that can make combat interesting and challenging. Wanna guess where the 2014 equivalent of this section is? Yes, at the very end for some reason, and it's shorter and worser. You were able to see that the whole time? There, it's fixed now. People are gonna know that I live in a tiny apartment. It outlines stuff like changes in elevation and positions, as in hard to reach spots that you can put players or enemies on so they are taking advantage of positioning. It mentions positioning. It also directly refers to you to the hazards section of the book, which I think it did before in 2014. Hazards are basically anything in a Super Mario level that could make a combat encounter more interesting, so lava. And it also tells you to give PCs and monsters a reason to move, as in not staying stationary for the entire fight, which is a fantastic way to make a fight extremely boring. Next up, difficulty has also changed. There are now 3 levels instead of 4. It is now low, moderate, and hard, as opposed to before where it was easy, medium, hard, and deadly. Why? Let me read you the definition of an easy encounter in the 2014 DMG. An easy encounter doesn't tax the character's resources or puts them in serious peril. They might lose a few hit points, but victory is pretty much guaranteed. Can you guess why they took this away? If you guess there's literally no point to this, you did it! This was pointless like 99% of the time, but in the very few situations where you actually needed a fight that was not a challenge even a little bit, you don't need guidance for that. You don't need a system to tell you how to make a fight bad. The new difficulties have beefed up explanations as to why you would pick one difficulty above another, and I like that much better. Also, deadly difficulty was a bad thing, because most combat should be deadly. It should have the possibility of death. Next up, and this is the biggie, the 2014 math for CR was, what's the word? How do you say insane. 3-second story time here. I have dyscalculia. I am clinically bad at math. I didn't try D&D for the longest time because I thought there would be way too much math in it. And then when I did try it, I didn't try DMing because CR was scary because there was so much math in it. I checked with other people that are not clinically bad at math, people that enjoy math, and they agree. It is time-consuming math. Maybe you don't find it hard, but it's a lot of math to do for every encounter, and a lot of the complexity of this system came because they were accounting for some members of the party being at a lower level than some others. And guess what? In 2024, that is not a thing they're accounting for anymore. Good. I mean, I guess not good for like the 4 people that play a game where some people have a lower level than others, but if you are at that level of complexity in D&D, do you need this? Also, it's just an extreme minority of players. Like, great, you can do that if you want to, but you realize that you are very much in the minority. Most people just play where everyone is the same level. And if that makes it so there's less math, it's less complex, and it's less time consuming, this is a good change. I'm so happy about this. So, down to the nitty-gritty. CR in 2014, and actually in 2024 too, is just a way to categorize XP. XP is what you actually use to calculate encounter difficulty. Remember when I complained that calculating an example by CR rules made every encounter a cakewalk at higher levels? And when I mean higher levels, I mean like higher than 5? Well, they have beefed up difficulty everywhere. Now everything is more difficult. Let me give you an example. A medium difficulty encounter in 2014 at level 1 was 50 XP, whereas in 2024, that would be a low difficulty encounter with the same level. And the disparity between the two grows bigger and bigger the more up in levels that you go. At level 10, which is where most D&D campaigns end, a medium difficulty encounter in 2014 was 1200 XP. Wanna know what a low difficulty, not the equivalent, not a moderate difficulty, a low difficulty in 2024 is in terms of XP? 1600. So the low 2024 difficulty is higher than the medium 2014 difficulty. If you're like me and numbers scare you, this is a safe space. The gist of this is they have made it harder, which is, as a person that writes stuff for this, exactly what CR needed. Because nobody wants the big bad boss of your campaign to die in 2 rounds. I wonder how the people that are saying that everything in these new books is dumbed down and for babies in order to make the game sillier are gonna fit this into the narrative that they have already constructed. Like, how are they gonna make this make sense regarding that? We shall see. Next up, how you actually make an encounter. In 2014 and in 2024, you choose your difficulty, tall, grande, or venti, and this is where it diverges. In 2014, you do a bunch of math and it takes a long time, and then you throw it in the garbage because it's useless. 2024 uses a very similar system with completely different wording that makes it much easier to understand at this point. They talk about encounters having a budget and spending, which is similar to what you did before. It is just explained better. A higher difficulty gives you more XP, which is basically the budget that you get for you to spend to create your encounter. Doesn't that make more sense? As I said, this is not like a wild change. It is just explained better than the 2014 one. Like, you get your little budget and you can buy your beholder and your tiefling that smells like eggs and dragons that are on sale, and you did it. You made an encounter. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but this wording makes it make so much more sense for my little pea brain. I like this much better. Good work on explaining the thing better. But this is not the reason why CR is better now. I mean, the reason before about beefing up every difficulty was a big part of this, but it's coming now. The good reason is now. The multiplayer is no more. I'm sure that everyone here is extremely familiar with the 2014 DMG, and you have read it cover to cover, and you continue to read it every night before bed.
Yeah. Wait, have you?
Yes, definitely. I love the DD Mega Doo-Doo Guide, but for those of you that maybe need a reminder, before, in the dark times, there was a multiplier to make the math even more tedious that was based on how many monsters were in an encounter. They have gotten rid of that. Now, if you're using several of the same monster, they give you guidance as to how many monsters there should be per PC. Let me read. If your encounter includes more than 2 creatures per character, include fragile creatures that can be defeated quickly. They also tell you what to do if there's too many monsters. And they also make a note of specifying how important it is to not do this, or to be very careful if you do this, at lower levels. As I said, I don't like math, clinically so. I think that this change is much better, but I like the rule about how many monsters per PC. I think that that's a good idea, and it basically, like, it's a cheat code for action economy. But I would have liked to just have like a super concrete set of rules of like, if there's these many monsters, you do that. If there's these many monsters, you do that. A simpler, even simpler thing. But yes, I do believe that this is better than what we had before. Another massive improvement is in 2014, they go, you can make a fight harder or more difficult with situational advantages. Go do that. Like, that's it. There's no more guidance. That's all they tell you. The section is like a fourth of a page. In 2024, this section takes several pages, and they give you actual examples of situational advantages and disadvantages and how to use them to make fights harder or easier. Now, in the vein of stuff that has been completely new and added into 2024, we have a bunch of stuff. There's an entire troubleshooting section, which I think is really cute, like very IT crowd coded. It notes down stuff that you might have added into the fight without even thinking that could make the fight way easier or way harder. Actual functioning advice, unheard of. There's also an entire section that is about monster behavior to tie roleplay into fights so that monsters act like living, breathing things and not like a video game mod that you just entered into its line of sight, so it's just attacking until it dies. And there's also a really cool reactive tactics section and prepare defenders section at the end of this whole section. It gives you a bunch of ideas as to how the monsters could actually be deployed in a tactical way, like if they're really thinking about how to win. It's not the monsters know what they're doing, the blog that is literally devoted to this, but it's better than anything we've got in 2014. And finally, for this section, the evil has been defeated. Random combat encounters are no more. Okay, I'm joking. I actually have complex feelings on this. I've said it before that random combat encounters are, what's the word? How do you say? Ass. I hate them so much. I hate that they are pointless. I hate that they don't contribute to the story. I hate that they're just either a random stopping point where the players are aware that they're not in any danger because no one is gonna die to a pack of wolves, or worse, an actual threat of death, which means your character's epic journey to defeat the big bad evil guy ends to a pack of random wolves, and not, you know, an actual plot relevant thing. And while I just never ever run random encounter tables, especially combat ones, that is just not a thing that happens on my table. There are tables where that is the norm, and that is fine. They can play D&D that way. There are people that enjoy them somehow, and I don't want to play that game. No thank you, but I think that those people should be able to play the game in the way that they like. In 2014, the random encounter table section was 3 pages. In 2024, it's half a page. So it's the only thing that is shorter in 2024. It no longer tells you how to create your own random encounter table, but rather just tells you why you may want to. As I said before, I firmly believe that these are just a trap for new DMs and not conducive to where the hobby is going. But I don't know. I don't know if I love that they have completely vanished from this section of the book. All in all, thoughts? We shall see. This is definitely an improvement in my book, like definitely simpler and easier to handle, and it's also harder, like in the sense of like the fights using this system are gonna be harder fights, which God did we need, but I cannot co-sign this and say it's 100% better until I actually see the monster manual, because that's the thing that has the CR in it. I cannot test out encounters and see the CR system actually working until I don't see the new version of monsters. But I am, you know what? No, I'm not cautiously optimistic. I'm optimistic. I like all the changes here. I'm great. I'm doing good. This is, in my book, a pretty clear improvement from what we had before. But as I said, that's not a hard bar to clear. CR was ass. And I do think that there's a version of this system that is even easier to handle for DMs. Like, I don't think that this is like perfect. Bottom line, as long as this is functional and actually is useful in creating combat encounters that are challenging for PCs without killing them all in one fell swoop, they did it. They accomplished the goal. If they can accomplish that, I'll be happy. And it looks like it might be the case. So I'm happy. This is my happy face. DM's Toolbox. Okay, left this for the end. This is the section I have the most complaints with. Welcome to the whinging zone. In 2014, this section was called the Dungeon Master's Workshop, and in 2024, it's called the DM's Toolbox. Leave an irrationally angry comment about how one is better than the other, just to keep me company. Very lonely. Thank you. The section on alignment, first off, is basically new. It's still there. It's still there. Alignment's still there. The evil has not been defeated. Lawful, neutral, chaotic, or otherwise. 2014 barely explains alignment, so I guess it's good that they codified it here more. They also specify that alignment is not a limit to the actions you can take, but rather a description of those actions, and how it's also a tool. A tool for bad storytelling. Sorry, just I can't help myself. Anyway, it's more in depth now. The section on chases had some changes added to it. Did you know that there was a section on chases? Yes, of course you did. I did too, because we both read the entire DMG cover to cover. Anyway, the rules are the same, but you get more ideas as to how to switch up your chase. Good. Unfortunately, it's in this DM's toolbox section where the de-emphasizing of homebrew and world building really shows its head, and I have a problem with it. The creating a creature section is, I'm gonna be kind and say laughable compared to the one in 2014. In 2014, our collective favorite book, the DMG 2014, walks you through creating a brand new baby to torment your players with. And it does it step by step, helping you choose AC, HP, attack bonus, damage per round, and save DC. It's all there. And it's divided by CR. CR is useless in 2014, but it's divided by it. 2024 just tells you to take an existing stat block and alter it. Thanks for the tip. Sure, this is an 100% okay method of monster making, especially for stuff like running the game at your table, but what? Really? I'm really disappointed in this. I feel like making a monster is such a baseline DM skill that it's good for you to learn, and it's insane that this book is not teaching you that. And it's insane that the older book did. Really, what gives? Honestly, this is one of the very, very few areas where I think that the 2014 DMG takes the cake. There's some cool stuff in here. There's a cool like creature traits section that I think is amazing, but it feels more like a supplement than a thing that is meant to replace the older version, at least in this very specific thing. I guess I'm just not a happy camper. This is not my happy face. Moving on from all this bad stuff, we have some really sick magical ailments and curses. Please comment on my witticisms in the comments below. Curses have been updated to be harder to remove, which I like way better. It worked great with my sorcerer subclass from my sorcerer video. And also, curses are a cool concept, and it sucks that like a level 3 spell can get rid of all of them. Now it can only get rid of some of them. And then the magical diseases are the same as in 2014. I was hoping for a new one for fun. The only thing that has changed is like an extremely minor tweak to healing. You don't care about this. Death is also completely new. I mean, not the concept. The concept is pretty old. I mean, you get it. You know what I mean. Being fair with your game's lethality is a much bigger emphasis, which good. Let's keep the power tripping to a minimum. But there's some variant rules on just not dying. Like there's a variant rule for you never ever dying. I'm practicing mindfulness, so I'm gonna say this change is not for me, but there's someone out there for whom this change is for them, and I'm happy for them. Unironically, it's good that it exists. I would never play this way. To me, if there's no threat of death, what's the point of any fight ever? But, you know, it's good that people that don't care about that and don't want to see their character ever die have an option. Critical Role's greatest enemy, doors, gets a whole section in the DM's toolbox. There is a section on doors in the 2014 DMG. It's just buried in the environment section. Environment door. Apparently. This section details HP and AC for common objects and how to calculate that, DCs for breaking and unlocking doors, which is always useful. I honestly mostly wanted to mention this because there's a section on secret door etiquette, and I just think that's a funny title to put in a book. I'm allowed to have fun. I'm sure that the person that wrote the secret door etiquette section is happy it's getting a mention. Okay, back to being mad. Again, dungeons now. Remember when I talked about the creating a monster section and I talked about how that feels more like a supplement than the 2014 one and it's woefully shortened from its original size? The same can be said about the creating a dungeon section. Why? And I have a hard time believing that they're adding this to the monster manual, so I don't have any hope. 2014 walks you through hundreds of tables. I'm exaggerating, but 2014 loves tables. It goes through table after table on how to build your dungeon. It gives you guidelines on location, creator, purpose, history, even difficulty, and creatures living within. 2024 has a table of dungeon quirks that are explicitly meant to be added to existing dungeons. So not dungeons that you create yourself, or at least this is not gonna help you make a dungeon. You do get the same tips as to how to map a dungeon, a list of common rooms, and like a table to see how ruined a structure is. What? This is like plainly 100% not enough to make your own dungeon from scratch. It's not even close. Once again, I gotta say, and I really don't enjoy saying this, disappointed with this. Like really, I guess it's because I feel like the 2024 version is so much better than the 2014 version. Seeing such a glaring omission, seeing two such glaring omissions is insane to me, because it feels like it's like a perfect replacement except for this tiny thing in a tiny section. But I think it's a, despite it being tiny, a pretty important thing. The game is called Dungeons and Dragons. It's half the title. You can't ignore half the title. Dragons behind. What have I done? Just kidding, I still hate them. Anyway, the section on gods has changed dramatically. There's stuff missing, but there's stuff added that kinda makes up for it. The through line here is the same as before. 2014 focuses on making your own gods, whereas 2024 focuses on how gods interact with your story and your players, which I think is even more important. Remember when I said that my theory is that 2024 focuses on story crafting? This is a great example of that. 2024 gives you some really good tips. It actually has a mention as to how clerics do not lose their powers if they fall off with their god. They don't have to work it out on the remix if they don't feel like it.
It's so confusing sometimes to be a cleric.
It also helps DMs with stuff like the augury spell or the commune spell or divine intervention rules. It's good. You get tips on how to integrate gods into your campaign. You get tips on how to use them for the story, how gods and players can interact between one another. It's all useful, but why is the create gods section missing? That's right, that one is basically gone again, which I think it sucks. But I do have a video making your own gods if you want to check it out. NPC creation gets a massive update. I feel like it's like twice the size. It also really simplifies the rules as to how to create NPCs on the fly, which I think is always good. It comes with a little handout and gives you way more information as to how not to overshadow your players with your NPCs, which I think is extremely important. Once again, 2024 is really on that narrative story crafting grind. I like it. Other than that, traps are better, mobs are better, poison is better, we get more hazards to spice up battles, and finally, emblematic for the problem of this whole section, the section on settlements is much shorter. Why? Because it's world building. Okay, not in the DM's toolbox, but I needed to mention this. There's a lore glossary at the end of this book. What is that? The PHB had the equivalent of this with mechanics, which, God, was that great? I like that. I like that so much. This is the equivalent of that with lore. Much shorter, much shorter, but good. D&D has a long and storied history of people with unpronounceable names that you know vaguely about if you're like younger than 40 and you haven't read a lot of wikis and old novels. I've done that. This is not a brag. I don't feel proud of that. I've done that. So if you have no clue on who Acererak the Tormenta is, this section is for you. If you previously thought that Vecna was a really cool Stranger Things OC Do Not Steal or Dead by Daylight enemy, what? Maybe someone does. This section is gonna be a godsend. A+, good idea to include this. The wiki dwarves that are working the wiki minds are salivating at the thought of this lore glossary thing. They're gonna have a great time. All in all, this is the only section where I felt that the 2014 was better sometimes than the 2024 one. Oopsie, made a whoopsie. There's some really high highs there. There are stuff where the 2024 one wins, but there's stuff missing that should not be missing. Maybe it's in the monster manual. And that's kind of it. I mean, there's a whole section on Greyhawk, like a whole bunch of it, and the campaign section didn't want to go too into it because it didn't feel like a change. It felt more like a thing that they added. There's also the whole D&D cosmology, like the different planes and the gods and stuff like that, but that's very to heavy. I don't know. It didn't feel like it went with this video. If this video does well, if y'all like this enough, you know, I'll make another video about that. How about that? Let's just, you know, let's keep being 1 hour video hell, where I belong apparently. Okay, that's enough, familiar, and happy birthday. Thanks. You're welcome. Bastion order. Do taxes. So I am a hireling. Final thoughts from me to you. I opened the video saying this, but it bears repeating. The 2014 DMG is not good, and this was admitted by the designers. To me, the 2024 version is an improvement in almost all areas, with the exception of world building, where the 2014 DMG wins by default by virtue of 2024. I guess not bothering with it. How weird. Bastions are insanely cool. Like, what a highlight. I am putting them in my games for sure. Travel is so much better, it's silly. CR seems to be better in every way, but we won't know until we see the monster manual. The book is laid out by actual people that actually read, and information is not buried in the weirdest spots. Overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I think that this one is gonna be less contentious than the PHB for sure. Definitely not, because people did not read the 2014 DMG though. Definitely. I love the Durham Mortimer guide. But since the 2024 DMG kind of forgot about them, here's my video on dungeons to make your own, and I do give you rules for it. And here's my video on world building that will help you actually world build. Okay, try your hand at DMing finally. It's a good excuse. Bye-bye. Mwah.